Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to present my Decolonizing the Curriculum and the Classroom presentation. And I would like to thank Nicola Maguire from ALL West of England. So first I need to introduce myself. I'm Maud Waret. I'm a French citizen living in the UK since 2008, which is quite a long time. So I do teach Spanish and French in a secondary school in Hertfordshire. I'm a linguist. I'm also a fiction writer in my spare time. I've been a musician, singer-songwriter. I'm a parent, and I'm also a partner. So I wanted to share with you my most recent experiences of racism. It's always happened since I was a child, and whatever country I'm in, there's always instances of it. So in October 2019, I was at university doing my PGCE course when a colleague told me that my hair was crazy. It was not someone I had any interaction before, so it wasn't in a friendly way. And later on in school, in October of 2020, a female student, one of my students, called out during my lesson and said, "Miss, why is your hair so messy?" So there's always been racist name calling since I was a child, but I thought that living in a big city like London, where there's lots of people who have afro hair, would make it less, would make it happen less, and yet. So historical racism and my own history of experiencing it started in the 80s because I'm an 80s child and I was brought up in rural France, in the middle of France, basically in the Berry region. And I was the only non-white person in a 150k radius. I think later on there was a Chinese family that's settled down in the little town I lived in, and then an African doctor came as well later on. But it was quite a lonely experience. These are examples of the name calling over the years. Obviously, they're mostly in French. I'll let you have a read. Some were pretty positive, some were downright negative, and some were quite disgusting. So it all depends on the context, but it's still a constant reminder that I do look different. So this background of mine makes me wonder why this is still happening. I mean, I'm going to be 40 soon, and I still get comments about my appearance, uncalled comments about my appearance. So I think we still need to do a lot of work on diminishing and decreasing and stopping racism. And after giving it a lot of thought since the lockdown started, I think we have reached a stage when we really need to look at what we teach to our students. So decolonizing the curriculum, what is this all about? So first, I wanted to share with you this picture of three women. So they are Black American, African American women. Do you recognize that? Well, if you don't, these are their names: Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi. And why aren't they more famous than that? I don't know really. I think it's because the media don't really want to present these three women as role models, and I think it's a shame because these three women started Black Lives Matter in 2013. So Black Lives Matter is quite famous now since the George Floyd murder and the Breonna Taylor murder in 2020. But there have been a grassroots movement started by these three women. And I think it's quite symbolical that this movement was started by women, and yet we hear a lot of negative things about this movement, and most people don't even know it was created by three women. I think it's food for thought. So This is a tweet I found. I'm on Twitter, and Catherine Beer-Balsing is quite a famous head teacher in London. She's got quite disciplinarian view of education, which proves to be quite efficient in teaching. However, I saw that tweet when she said, when the world is upside down, it makes sense that a movement that caused so much destruction should be nominated for a Peace Prize. The Nobel Peace Prize, let that sink in. So obviously she's not really keen on the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, I wonder, as an educator, if I can do something to counterbalance these kind of attacks on a movement which is non-violent by definition. And I would like every educator in the UK to go and have a look at the website of the Black Lives Matter and read through what the content is about, because I don't think we should be able to, as a head teacher in the UK, describe it as a destructive movement. And I think everybody should form their own opinion. So when you're done with my presentation, please go and check their website and see what they're advocating for. I'm here to take a stand because I think we have a habit of targeting women when they try to change the world they inhabit and the community they live in. These three women want to stop police brutality. It's as simple as that. So accusing them of being destructive to me is quite cynical. Now, I would love to spend my whole presentation on showing how racism is infiltrating everything in our societies, but I don't have the time. So I'm going to start with this. We live in a society where racism is institutionalized. It's not just my assumption, okay? It's been proven, if you know the Stephen Lawrence case, and his mother, Baroness Lawrence, has been working hard to show how the Met Police was institutionalized and racist. So I'm not going to spend my time proving this. I just want to show you what you can do in that context as a teacher and as an educator to fight racism. So I chose this picture, the removal of the Jane Reed statue in Bristol, because I thought that was a beautiful statue. And I thought it was so positive and it was empowering for women of color. And I'm really disappointed it was taken down after a few hours, if not a day. Now, what is decolonizing the curriculum? This is what we're doing today. First, decolonizing the curriculum asks us to look at our shared assumptions about the world. It is questioning the impact of colonization in history, economy, and cultural representations. So it starts by us realizing that history shapes our present, and we shouldn't let it shape our future. Second, decolonizing the curriculum asks us to think about the implications of a more diverse student body in terms of pedagogy and achievement. Whether you teach in the Midlands towards a very white British school audience, or if you teach in an inner city London school, you need to show that the world is diverse. It's an essential part of your duty as an educator. So you need to decolonize the curriculum to represent the world we live in. Third, decolonizing the curriculum means making BAME public and historical figures more predominant and making BAME artists seen and heard. So Black and ethnic minority people are just as important in history, economy, culture, and music and the arts. So we need to celebrate their achievement as educators, because for so long they've been left to the side and ostracized. So this is what decolonizing the curriculum is about. Now, this is a picture of me and my colleagues and I. We are MFL teachers. Teach Spanish and French. We are linguists. Some of us speak more than Spanish, French, and English. And we care about words and their meanings. I think we need to use words with awareness So I'm quoting Shakespeare in Hamlet, words, words, words. Words have powers, okay? So as educators, we need to choose the right ones and we need to really ponder on their meaning. So the word racism is very recent, actually. Racialization, racism, and race are 19th century concepts. They are a social and political construct. It was a tool to cement the notion of hierarchy and power in society. If someone is identified as inferior, then one feels entitled and justified controlling them for profit. What is the origin of the word racism? Well, I said it was pretty recent. So, bear with me. The word appears in the early 20th century during the Boers War in South Africa and later in 1930s Germany in the context of fascist theories, and it is commonly used since 1936. It replaced earlier words such as racialism, 1882, and racialist, 1910. It is first described in a published work in the UK by James Strachey Barnes in The Universal Aspects of Fascism. So we can't separate racism and fascism at that stage. When did racism become institutionalized? So that is a very difficult question. My personal answer is going way back at the beginning of slavery. So the controversy of Valladolid, and those who speak Spanish must have heard of it, 1515, 1551, suggests that theologians and priests, Catholic priests, were concerned by the treatment of conquered tribes in South America in the New World, and they argued on theoretical, moral, and theological grounds. Bartolomé de las Casas and his opponent, Juan Ginés de Sepúlveda, disagreed on the justification of colonization, human rights, and freedom of indigenous people. So the conference happened 30 years after the beginning of the slave trade started by the Portuguese, and I think it's quite relevant. So I would say racism became institutionalized then, although it wasn't used as a term yet. So this is a picture of an indigenous local and Bartolomé de las Casas. So now what can you do as a teacher, as an MFL teacher? Well, first you need to be aware of what's going on, and then you need to be informed. That's the basic duty of any educator. Now, if you're interested in doing something about it, you need to decolonize your practice. So my question is, as a teacher, when you taught language, vocabulary to describe a physical appearance to your students, which you usually do in year 7, did you teach the word for afro hair in your language lesson? Did you teach the word to describe skin color in your language lesson? If you did, well done. If you didn't, why? And why not? So we need to find out the importance of celebrating diversity in languages, as well as in society. So to decolonize language learning, we need to give the right words to describe hair and skin for our students. And this is why we need to talk about afro hair. The racial issue lies in the fact that what is different and relatively rare in Europe is considered inferior or lacking or messy in comparison. And this is what I've always heard in my youth and up until now. My hair is different and it's crazy. I've heard so many times that my hair is crazy, whereas it's absolutely natural and normal if you're of sub-Saharan African origin. Why is that terminology used? The problem is that this is the type of hair that we see in the media. This is the type of hair you see in Disney cartoons. This is the type of hair that people look forward to and want to emulate. I do not object to curiosity and wonder about my hair. I do object to the imposition of Caucasian beauty standards. We are not all blonde, we're not all fair, we don't all have wavy hair. So why is it supposed to become the norm to which we have to judge our appearance? So brief history of my afro hair. Well, my afro hair changes every day. It depends on the humidity in the air, and it depends on the time I have to spend on it. Sometimes I plait it, sometimes I let it go natural. Sometimes I do what I call curly whirlies. The way I style my hair has an impact on my daily life, though, because I get attention and people treat me differently. If I ever have my hair in an afro, which means I just brush my hair and let it loose, then people touch my hair in the shops or in the pub or in the restaurants. So my natural instinct is to keep control of my hair and control it and not let my afro, which is my natural state of hair, be. So taking care of afro hair is really difficult. It's an art, it's a science. It's been done for thousands of years. In some countries, they use butter, they use plenty of materials that I don't have time to discuss with you, but it's fascinating. Here you see in this picture by Eric Laforgue that men's hair are twisted around a stick with butter to give it shape, and you could argue that this is what was done to the Egyptian ancient Egyptians hairstyle. Afro textured hair is still perceived as unprofessional. If I come with an afro, I might be seen as attention seeking. Unkept, political. If I come out with my afro, people are going to think about the Black Panthers in America. Activist, messy. I got told that I had messy hair last October. Primitive, because straight hair seems to be the aim. So if I don't have straight hair, then I'm a bit backward, I'm uncivilized. Or attention seeking. All that just by me having hair growing on my head. So appearances and hairstyles are a way of expressing oneself, but it's also a way of controlling people. And I sincerely advise you to watch this movie on Netflix if you can, and maybe use it in your language lessons. In the Victorian times, a hair straightening comb was invented to tame black hair by Mrs. C.J. Walker. She became the first black African millionaire. But the irony is that she became empowered and businesswoman by selling a product that went against natural hair. She was making black women have hair that looked more like white women's. Now, we all know Beyonce, she's a good role model. But for hair, Beyonce's always followed the Caucasian model. Here you see straight, blonde. It's not real. It's make-believe. Her sister, on the other hand, was considered more maybe activist, more political. She usually lets her hair be natural. They're very different people. One is following the diktat of straight hair, and one is trying to be more embracing of more embracive of her natural hair. So I'm gonna give you a trigger warning. The next two slides contain disturbing images showing medical imagery, signs of physical violence, and signs of self-harm. So this is because we are teachers and we also have a safeguarding duty. So this diktat of having Caucasian hair causes health risks to our young people. You might have noticed it already. A lot of young girls with afro hair lose their hair here because of traction alopecia. It doesn't happen just to Black African people or people with afro hair. It happens also to ballerinas because they're always taught to pull their hair, and it can lead to hair loss. Now, women who want to have straight hair use chemical products which are very, very dangerous for their health, can lead to burns, and it can also lead to fibroids, uterine fibroids. So we are damaging our health when we try to have Caucasian hair when we're not born with it. So PSHE and safeguarding, you need to be aware and you need to look out for the students who have scratched their hair, their scalp a lot. It's not for nits. It may be because they have constant rash or itch because of the products they use. If girls complain their hairstyle is too tight, you need to refer to the school nurse or talk to parents because they can lose their hair. Afro hair looking unkept, untangled. As I said, it's very time consuming and expensive to take care of afro hair. So if the children come in and you notice that their hair is really unkept, it can be a sign of neglect, and you might want to talk to your safeguarding officer. People always tie their hair too tight, again, traction alopecia risk. Also, feelings of self-loathing and negative comments on their appearance and their looks. I know lots of little mixed race girls who complain that they don't like their hair. We need to really be aware of that, because when you don't like yourself, you can't feel good about yourself. Also, they can praise their friend's hair if they have blonde or curvy or wavy hair. And this goes again into reinforcing that stereotype that white people hair is better hair. And also it can lead to depression. So we need, as educators, to be aware of that. Now, hair politics in the classroom. If you want to decolonize the curriculum, you need to start by looking at the school policies on appearances and uniforms. A lot of, we need to support and report, for instance, if there's bullying, if there's students making comments about hair, you need to nip it in the bud. Racial slur on social media. In my daughter's school, there was a little girl, and her mother is white, and the father passed, and he was African, and the white mother, didn't really know how to deal with their afro hair. So the little girls were called monkeys in the school playground. So it still happens in 2020. We really need to be on it and offer support to the mother if she needs help with dealing with afro hair. I always encourage and praise students also who show signs of acceptance and body positivity. So if you have a student who's letting her hair natural, please praise it. Just tell her, oh, you look great. Reinforce that positive attitude towards her looks, her natural looks. And obviously promote LGBTQ rights in ethnic communities, because we know it's a matter of emergency. Now, I've talked to this lovely girl, Ruby, on Zoom. She had a very tough ride in school because the school policies was used against her, and they were asking her to hide her afro and to control her afro. And thank God Ruby's mum is a teacher, and Ruby's mum didn't accept the status quo, and she fought against the school. But the head teacher, who was trying to convince Ruby to straighten her hair, is still a head teacher in England, and it's a sad state of affair that Ruby had to leave the school. So if you want, she was publicized in the media, but it was during the pandemic, so we don't know much about it, but I think it's a real scandal. Now, if you think Ruby William got into trouble because she did have a big afro, and if you think it's okay to tell someone to hide their natural hair, I could also argue that this happens to boys, even if they plait their hair and keep it really nice and neat, because cornrows are not allowed by some school policies. So please check your school policies on uniform and hairstyles, because it might just be a racist policy in disguise if cornrows aren't allowed. So to decolonize your school, you need to start with your school policies about appearances, and then you need to walk around your school when you can go to school, look at posters and materials. Maybe count how many non-white people are represented on the posters. Do they represent a diverse student cohort? Do the materials used, the manuals, books, represent a diverse world history? Or are they mostly celebrations of white middle-class men and their achievements? It took me 20 years to realize that not only white men wrote, because I've only read white men's literature for many, many years at school. And I had to go to university to realize that there was women's study departments in America. And there was women who were writers since the Middle Ages, Christine de Pizan included. So we need to make it obvious from the start and not wait till we get to university to realize that women writers are just as important. Now, what can you do in your own classroom? And I hope you all have your own classroom, your own space to inhabit and make it your own. First, I would advise you, if you're a French speaker, to buy these two books, Juliette Smeralda, Peau noire, cheveux crépus, l'histoire d'une aliénation, and Afro by Rokhaya Diallo. So these two books are really good if you want to understand the history of Afro hair and how Afro hair has been criticized again and again. A historical outlook on Afro hair and celebration of its beauty is much needed in any library. Any good school library should have these in the text or in translation. Now, this book is quite recent. It's not just about Afro beauty; it's about beauty in general, and it's not age defined. There's pictures of women in the 80s and women were just about becoming women. So Mihaela Norok is a Bulgarian lady from Bucharest, and she went on a world trip to take pictures of beautiful women who spoke to her heart. And I think to celebrate diversity, this book should be on everybody's bookshelf, and also to empower women photographers. This poster is really important. It's a Black is Beautiful poster. It's obviously, as you can see in the fashion, very 60s inspired. We still need to celebrate Black beauty. It's still not accepted that Black is beautiful, so that's a great poster to have. Now, this video clip, I don't think I have time to show it to you, but it celebrates 100 years of hairstyles on an Afro type hair. It's a lovely project, and I sincerely advise you to look at it. It offers videos for all types of people, white, black, men, women. It's really good. Now, La beauté noire au naturel. So I'm an advocate of natural beauty. I think we need to show what's beautiful about what we have rather than try to look at or to look like someone who's different from us. So I do like when people show their real hair. The history of Afro hair shows how slavery and segregation influenced African Americans and created a feeling of self-hatred. Many Black women dislike their appearance. They hide their natural hair under weaves, wigs, or change the nature of their hair using dangerous chemical products. Hair and skincare is big business with powers at play, and women spend a lot of money on products that may be harmful. So you're doing something about global health if you encourage women to ditch the nasty chemicals and just use natural products to celebrate what they have that is beautiful. So now, as language teacher, please, you should all look for something similar, a glossary that shows the type of curls. 20% of French people have curly, frizzy or Afro hair. They're not all Black. They could be Jewish, or they could be, I don't know, they could be Celts. There's Afro or curly hair types in many, many different ethnicities. But they need to have their own hair described using the correct terms. So here you have cheveux crépus, cheveux frisés, cheveux bouclés, ondulés, and lisses ou raides. I think it's really important that we start using the right words. Skin tones, and this is another amazing project by another woman who's amazing. What a great role model. Angelica Das is Brazilian, and she started taking pictures of people she knew and then many, many other people. And she uses some pigments from their nose to create the background. And she names every skin tone color. It's beautiful. It's thought-provoking. I think arts teacher would love to do a project about that. That poster should be in every school. There's a great TED talk with Angelica Das that you should all watch. She's really inspiring. Now, I'm a writer and I'm interested in words as a linguist. So this is a great website, Writing with Color. If you have students who are really into creative writing, I would advise them to look at it. It's how to describe skin tone and respect diversity in vocabulary. So a lot of people are criticizing the use of food items to describe people's skin tones, like chocolate or, licorice. I don't mind so much because I think food is an integral part of who we are as humans. I love food, and I think to me it's not an issue, but I can understand that some people see it as being again an example of racism. So you have other options on that website. They talk about using metals, onyx, alabaster, copper, uh, pigments from earth like ochre, sienna. Um, so there's many options using the color of straw or other natural objects, autumn leaves, etc. So you can use a lot of different vocabulary. You can do an activity such as this one, for instance. I put all the words that can be used in French to describe skin, color, chocolat, caramel, douce, cuivrée, luisante, brûlée, ambrée, etc. So you can do cognate race, ask the students to highlight all the words they recognize. You can do a dictionary race, who can find all the translation as fast as possible. You can do categories, positive terms, negative terms, and you can ask them, for instance, which words are considered negative by some groups. So I know in America, there's a current where they really do not want these food items to be used as comparison. So you have café, ébène, couleur miel, chocolat, caramel. Also because these products, ébène, ebony, and chocolat, coffee or chocolate, were used for the trade during slavery. So you can start a discussion about that with your students. Now, if you really want to be involved in that decolonizing the classroom, the curriculum, and the school program, you need to broadcast Black and ethnic minority people in as many lessons as you can. So I created an acronym because acronyms are quite the trend on there in education. So I did the PSPS acronym, which is promote BAME artists, writers, thinkers, scientists, and students. Showcase their work, their art in your school. Praise their contributions to society. And support their political actions and activism. And I insist on support their political action and activism. If we don't do anything about racism, we're complicit. So if you want to stop racism, you're going to have to go on the website of Black Lives Matter, read about it. And next time someone says it's a Marxist organization that is destructive, you will have the tools to explain why it isn't. Now, if you teach French, and some of you do, promote great artists. So Iso is fantastic. She's gorgeous. She's encouraging body acceptance and body positivity. Her songs are great. Lyric-wise, you can do lots with it in your classroom. And her voice is phenomenal. So what a great artist to promote in your lessons. Now, another one everybody knows, Omar Sy is the most famous French actor, I think. What a change from Gérard Depardieu. So just showcase his movies, talk about him. He's married to a French lady. They have mixed race kids. He's a great role model. Just promote him. Talk about Lupin. I told my students to watch Lupin. They really liked it. Now, I'm going to talk about a method. I think it's the elastic band method. And this is what I think you should do in your lessons. So first, you start small. You start by talking about what's generally considered a normal cultural reference in the curriculum. And then you expand and you include more diversity. So that's how I build my lesson planning, and I'm going to show you with examples. So start from the historical cultural reference that's considered accepted. So Edward Colston, some of you might have heard of him. I used to live in Bristol in 2004, and I didn't realize who he was, because obviously when you go to Colston Hall for meeting people to go to a coffee shop, you don't Google who Colston is, usually. And that was before Google, anyway. So it's only when I left Bristol that I heard about Edward Colston. So Edward Colston was a sea merchant, a slaver, and a Bristolian philanthropist, and a Tory MP. So he's got his statue, he had his statue in Bristol, and lots of the Afro-Caribbean population were not happy about having a slaver sculpture and the town hall named after him, or a local place named after him. So you mentioned Colston in your lesson, or in your history lesson, or in your language lesson, and then you expand. You show how difficult it is to judge people, because at the time he was doing lots of philanthropy for his town, but he was using slavery to fund it. So you expand. You start with the reference. There was a man who had lots of money and helped Bristolians. And then you show that he benefited from a very disgusting system, slavery. And now there's people who are trying to stop it, and you expand and you introduce Jen Reed, who's a Black woman, and you make your lesson more diverse. But you start from the beginning and you explain what happened historically. So it is high time for awareness. I think we all agree on it, and this is why you're looking at my presentation. It shows something when Band-Aid starts to sell different colored plasters. It shows that awareness is happening. Not everybody has a peach color nude tone. Not everybody. Enlightened. So let's work on that. So for your A-level students and their research projects, I would advise to look at historical aspects of promotion of BAME people. There was an amazing exhibition, Le Modèle Noir, at Le Palais d'Orsay. So you talk about Le Palais d'Orsay, you show what it is, you give the historical background, and then you expand. You don't just focus on famous French painters. No, you go further and you introduce other representation of the black body, and you show how also it's been used as an object and objectified. So you can really go further when you expand with that elastic band method. You introduce new writers. The Congolese writer Emmanuel Dankala wrote a book about a mixed-race violinist who lived in Europe during the 18th century. Just use this book. Give this book to one of your students who is interested in music and race, and that's how you expand the curriculum and you make students more aware of racism in history. Most people know about the Musketeers, but do they know that the writer was mixed race? Alexandre Dumas is an amazing person to write a research project about. Now, for your KS full students, we need to focus on social and cultural aspects. I've used this. This is a text. You ask your students to do the cognate race, and then you ask them to maybe do a running dictation. You can find lots of activities on that simple text. And then you just let them talk. What do they think about it? How would they translate bavure? You know, we have a term, a French term that means when a policeman does something that is out of frame, out of legal framework. What would be the English term for that? You can go into a lot of details with that. Then you show them this picture and you say, what do you think these people have in common? Describe these people. They can use skin tone. They can use I think that, or it seems that. They can use all the structures you need for GCSE. Il me semble que, il se pourrait que, conditional tense, etc. And then you reveal at the end that these men, mostly men, there's only one woman on bottom left, were all killed by police in France since 2005, and they are usually of African descent. And then a discussion can start. For your KS3 lesson, if you don't want to be too heavy and talk about social aspects, you can still make them inclusive. So in an instrument lesson, well, instead of showing just a white student playing piano, just choose very famous Black or chosen Asian woman, Anika Sankar, just show other people who are masters of the instruments. So you can do a little quiz and see who's who. That's the easiest one, the man with the trumpet. Louis Armstrong joue de la trompette. Now that one, if you're into jazz, Esperanza Spalding joue de la contrebasse. Excellent. Here, Anika Shankar joue du sitar. And the last one is from the UK. Sheku Kene Mason joue du violoncelle. Okay, so with one lesson on instruments, you can add inclusion and diversity. And it's our duty, isn't it? So now, if you want a project, an audio library recording project for your students, I'm aware that we are not teaching in normal times, we are in a pandemic. So I've devised something you can do. These are very short, simple primary school books, most of them, that are French. Obviously, if you teach Spanish or German, you might want to look out for similar ones. I found a list on that website, Roots Edition Boutique, so you can find similar lists. So you get funding either by crowdfunding. I did that and it worked very well. Or you invest the money from your school library if they have a spare budget, or you buy the books yourself if you want to invest in it. And then you scan some parts of the books and you ask your students to read it out loud. They can practice, and then they use Vocaroo, for instance, and then they read it and record themselves, and then you can create a whole audio library of your students reading the books. And if you want to go further, you can contact a French school somewhere else, in France or somewhere else, Brazil or Mexico, and you can send them the stories and they can play it to their students as an exchange. So you don't need a great setup with a mic, you just need your computer and the Vocaroo app. It's not even an app, it's just a website. And your students can read a page per story and create an audio library. It's a great activity to make people think they're working together collaboratively, even though we're online. Now, lesson about hobbies, because we all have to do that in Key Stage 3. Again, there's so many Black or mixed race people who are great at sports. It's easy to find. You have Kylian Mbappé fait du football, Katarina Johnson-Thompson fait de l'athlétisme, Marie Tabarly fait du cheval, Mehdi Metela fait de la natation. Okay, so include, again, showcase, support Black and ethnic minority people who are doing great. Now, making a difference in lesson planning with that elastic band method, I'm showing you. So I start with a hobby. I start with the traveling theme. We all need to do le voyage at one point. So this is GCSE typical vocabulary. I'm just showing you because it fits what we do in our curriculum, in our national curriculum. And we start with that elastic band method. So you give them the cultural reference, the accepted cultural reference, the sailor, le marin, the outfit, the history. They need to know that. And then you expand by just doing vocabulary practice, drilling, or slap the board games, any games. And then you go a little bit further. I chose Eric Tabarly because I think he's got an amazing story, biography. For those who don't know him, he was a sailor. He won many races, and then he fell in love and married a woman of color. They had a child, and then he fell in the sea and he died. So it's quite a tragic, romantic figure. And when you talk about Eric Tabarly, you can introduce the fact that French families can be mixed race families. And I think we really need to promote this. As we thought about with Omar Sy, Eric Tabarly is another example of a mixed race family. And then you can introduce Guadeloupe, because obviously the sailor is a very, it's a Celt tradition, isn't it? It's from La Bretagne, but there's also the link with the West Indies, French West Indies, like Guadeloupe. Not many people know about it. You can teach your students. And then you introduce the dum-dum, which is cultural about France. And then you can dive into the history, sugarcane, colonial architecture, slavery and the boat that were transporting people were kidnapped from Africa. And then you can talk about solitude and rebellions. It's so rich. From that normal KS3 or 4 lesson about traveling, you can reach so much about universal history of man and women. And then if you want to ask your students, they can do a presentation on Lilian Thuram, Marie-Josée Pérec, or Solitude for famous Guadeloupeans. So a case 3 lesson on linguistics can lead to a reflection on colonization. And this is really what we need to do as educators. We need to make students aware that we have done this in the past to ourselves. Now I'm going to show you another example of that elastic band method. I start with Les Misérables, Victor Hugo, one of the most famous 19th century writers of France, and then I stretch and stretch and stretch and give them a presentation about Lajli, the film director. So it's steeped in French history. You're going to have to mention, Victor Hugo, as famous as Charles Dickens. You're going to talk about L'Arc de Triomphe for his funerals that was veiled, draped in black. You're going to talk about Les Misérables, the characters, maybe the Hunchback of Notre Dame, etc., etc. This is GCSE. You're still in the national curriculum. You go further and further. You can also do exam practice with the palm, location, mood, action, weather, people. And then you can show them a recording of Paris. There's great videos now that show the early videos taken by the Frères Lumière. You can talk about Gavroche. You can include video and songs. I'm not going to do that now. This is all the vocabulary they need from their manuals. And then you go to Les Misérables de Lajli and you show them the trailer and you ask them to describe what they see. And then you can end up talking about police brutality, all these very important events that are happening and unfolding in the States and in the UK and in France. It's all there in Les Misérables de Lajli. The activities you can do is using the past tense, j'ai entendu, j'ai vu, after watching the video. The comparison, in Les Misérables de Victor Hugo, they were dressed as soldiers. In Lajli, they're dressed normally with t-shirts and jeans. You compare scenes, you compare characters, what are the differences and the similarities between Gavroche and Issa. And then you talk about la banlieue, which is the slum, the ghetto, the reality of French life nowadays. For your creative writing, il n'y a ni mauvais herbe ni mauvais homme, il n'y a que de mauvais cultivateurs. Talking about metaphors, transferable skills with English, so much to do. Here you can add, I studied that with my year 11. You make them watch and study the chorus, for instance, Diams, ma France à moi. You can also use This is la peste, introduce rap. French rap is quite famous worldwide. And also my cognate race, La Course sur Ligne. I think it's great to make them feel like they know a lot. Oh, I would put lots of yellow. I know so many words from that song. And it's a good start to make them work on text. Ping pong reading, so many activities. So here I put a list of all the things you can do with that very rich, authentic material. Listen without images, watch without the sound, give a running commentary of the Gavroche scene, for instance, make hypotheses using the conditional test, watch extract, imagine the rest of the plot, write alternative dialogue. You can work in collaboration with the drama teacher, if you have time, reenact the scene, express your opinion on the plot, the song, the writing, the lyrics, sing the song. I have students who like singing, they can use vocal roots, send you the recording, etc. So more ideas for GCSE. And now I'm even stretching the elastic band even further because I love art and I love history and I'm a feminist. So I want to do that lesson as well. L'art urbain et la banlieue, Mystique, Algerian French artist who started in the 80s painting murals, a little bit like Banksy, but in a feminist kind of French way. Great for translating, can do a Google Translate exercise with that one. Passer du masculin féminin, talking about genre and grammar, it's very contemporary. So you can ask the students to change the whole text that's in the masculine into the feminine and make them realize the implications of that. All the way I'm going to that, and I think when the elastic band is really stretched at its limit, you talk about decolonizing and beyond. And beyond is talking about intersectionality, another African American term. La misogynoire, so it was invented and penned by Moya Bailey in 2010. It's the layers of difficulties people have in their lives when they are women, and then they are Black, or sometimes they are LGBTQ, and this adds up, and it's even harder to succeed. So there's some great writers, great thinkers. I really like Naya Ali's videos. They're a bit old now, they're 5 years old, but on YouTube they could be used for your students. And also Afua Hirsch, British, great book to read. Now, LGBTQ and BAME people, this is extremely important. We have more people committing suicide in BAME when they are LGBTQ because their families reject them. So it's really important. School is a safe place where they're welcome and they can express themselves. We need to encourage our students to feel at ease with who they are, whether it's a color or a gender or a sexuality. Martha P. Johnson, there's a documentary about her. She was a transgender woman and founder of the Stonewall riots. So her death was labeled a suicide, but her friends think she was murdered. A lovely smile. What can you do in assembly? That's another thing. It's not just you in your classroom putting posters from Angelica Das or from the Atlas of Beauty. We need to change the whole school ethos, being more inclusive. So what I advise is a Black History each month. Ask a student to do an assembly presentation once a month about one Black or mixed race or Asian personality that they relate to. It can be Black women in science, it can be Black history, it can be a contemporary Black BAME role models, someone from African history or African literature. Just encourage the students to speak out. You'll find students who want to share. It's really important to give them a space where they can talk rather than us talking all the time. So we did talk about what we can do in the classroom. So I want to show you my ideal decolonized classroom. So it's got the poster of Angelica Das, but it's got lots of DVDs and it's got lots of books in all languages, French or English or Spanish, if you have to teach Spanish as well, and I'm sure you can find German ones, and also African art and fabrics. It's really important to broadcast African art. There's some amazing art, recent art. If you can't afford the real thing, just a poster will do. And also famous VIPs, Christine Taubira, Yannick Noah, Omar Sy, Josephine Bakers, Jesse Norman, and more recent one, if you want, just make sure your classroom shows that there's more than just one color. So I did a crowdfunding a year ago and I bought some of these books. I still have some money to spend, but I'm not in my classroom, so I don't really see the point in buying these books right now, but I will. So these are books I bought, and I let my students read it during silent reading time, during tutor time. And I use noordinarybookshop.co.uk because it's an activist, an old lady who's the owner of the online library, and I wanted to support her. Reading you can do. Eagles Who Soar, amazing at showing the difficulty of being a Black boy in the UK. Akala, Race and Class in the Ruins of Empire. Afra Hirsch, I mentioned her, British. If you want to go further into linguistics and the metaphysical aspect of being Black and African, Decolonizing the Mind by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And just an example of something I've done in assembly. This is a presentation I did with my students. Why do I have to talk about Black history if I don't live in America? I think all lives matter is something I heard many times. Sure, but let me use an analogy. There's a spelling mistake, I need to correct it. Save the polar bear, yes, but what about all the other bears? Well, that's fine, but the ice cap is melting right now. The polar bear needs saving as a matter of urgency. It is a matter of life and death. Black Lives Matter is about matter of lives and death. So when people are asking to stop police brutality, it's to save lives. Can you help out? You need to speak out, write it out. We had a poetry writing competition that the students did, Black VIP's presentation, and these are examples of my students. So beautiful drawings, presentation about famous Black people in France, Paul Pogba, Yannick Noah, for sure. Black Lives Matter poems made by some of my form tutor, year 7. Presentation for Stromé, Nicolas Pepe, Christine Taubira, Soya Bonali, some drawings. So you see the students really went for it and they loved it and they gave a lot of presentation. Obviously they use Google Translate, but they did make an effort. Initiatives you can do next year. 100 Great Black Britons. On the 15th of September 2022, Afro Hair Day. I'll do it this year if I go back to school, and resources. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope that was helpful. I put lists of all the resources at the end. I have made a list of African American people from France, so African American and also African people and also French Black people if you want to encourage your students to do biographies about them. There's some great online resources, articles, feature film, everything. Thank you so much, and I hope that was helpful.